The lights inside Allegiant Stadium didn't just dim that night, they collapsed into silence, like the entire world was holding its breath at the exact same moment. 50,000 people, maybe more, all waiting for something they couldn't quite name yet. The air was electric, thick with anticipation, humming with the kind of energy that only happens when history is about to unfold, and nobody realizes it yet. Backstage, everything was louder, footsteps, voices, the distant roar of a crowd that sounded more like a storm than an audience. And in the middle of it all stood Paak, known to the world as the unstoppable, ever-smiling force of rhythm, charisma, and pure musical instinct. Tonight, he wasn't just the opening act. He was part of something bigger. Something personal. That he adjusted his glasses, fingers tapping lightly against the edge of the DJ console in front of him. A habit. A rhythm. A way to stay grounded. Because even for someone like him, someone who had shared stages, won awards, and built a career on confidence, this night felt different, because this wasn't just any show, this was the romantic tour, and this was Bruno Mars' world. From somewhere down the hall, a voice called out, 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Anderson exhaled slowly, rolling his shoulders back. He had done this 1,000 times before. The crowd, the lights, the noise, it was his element. But tonight, something sat heavier in his chest. Not fear. Not nerves. Something else. Something he couldn't quite explain. Then he heard it, laughter, familiar. Smooth. Effortless. Bruno, leaning casually against a wall, already dressed, already glowing with that effortless charisma that made everything around him feel like part of a performance, even when it wasn't. He looked over at Anderson with that signature grin, the kind that always meant something was coming. You ready? Bruno asked, his tone light, but his eyes sharper than usual. Anderson smirked. Man, I stay ready. Bruno chuckled, stepping closer. Nah, not like this. Tonight's different. There was a pause. Just a second. But it lingered, because deep down, Anderson knew. Bruno was right. The stage manager signaled again. 2 minutes. The crowd outside was getting louder now, chanting, screaming, building toward something explosive. Anderson could feel it in his bones that he stepped toward the entrance tunnel, the darkness ahead glowing faintly with the spill of stage lights. This was it. And then, yo. Bruno's voice stopped him. Anderson turned. Bruno walked up beside him, not smiling this time. Not performing. Just, real. You ever think about how far we came? Bruno said quietly. The question caught Anderson off guard. Every day, he replied. Bruno nodded slowly, looking out toward the stage. From nothing, to this. The crowd roared again, louder than ever. And they think this is just a show, Bruno continued. They don't see the nights, the losses, the stuff we don't talk about. Anderson felt something shift in the air, because this wasn't small talk anymore. Bruno turned to him fully now. But I see it, he said. I see you. The words hit differently, not loud. Not dramatic, but heavy. You carried more than people know, Bruno continued. And you never let it break you. That's why you're here. Not just as my guy, not just as DJ P. He paused, but as someone who earned this moment. Anderson blinked, something in his chest tightened, because this wasn't the Bruno Mars the world saw. This wasn't the jokes, the swagger, the showmanship. This was something deeper, something honest. I mean that, Bruno said, softer now. Don't ever let anybody make you feel like you're just part of the background. You built this too. Silence. For a split second, the noise from the crowd disappeared. The lights, the stage, the pressure, it all faded into the background, because those words, they landed somewhere Anderson wasn't prepared for. Memories flashed, fast, sharp, uninvited, sleeping in cars, empty pockets, studio sessions that went nowhere, smiling through struggles nobody ever saw, years of grinding, pushing, surviving, and suddenly, it all came rushing back at once. That he looked away for a second, jaw tightening. Man, he exhaled, shaking his head slightly. You gonna say all that right before I go on? Bruno smirked again, but there was something softer behind it now. Yeah, he said. Because I know you. And I know you don't hear it enough. Another pause, then Bruno added, almost under his breath, and I know what it feels like, to wonder if it was all worth it. That did it. Anderson swallowed hard, because that wasn't just a statement, that was truth, raw. Unfiltered. Shared between two people who had walked through fire in different ways, but somehow ended up standing on the same stage. The stage manager's voice cut through again. Go time. The moment snapped, the lights flared brighter, the crowd exploded. Anderson turned back toward the tunnel, but his vision blurred just slightly, not from the lights, not from the smoke machines, but from something else, something he didn't expect, emotion, real, unguarded, impossible to hide emotion that he laughed under his breath, wiping quickly at his face. Man, you wild for that, he muttered. Bruno just grinned. Go kill it. And with that, Anderson. Paak stepped onto the stage. The roar that hit him was deafening. A tidal wave of sound crashing over him, lifting him, carrying him forward. Lights flashing, bass pounding, energy surging through every inch of the stadium. This was his moment, and he owned it. Every beat dropped harder. Every transition sharper. Every movement more alive than the last. The crowd responded instantly, jumping, screaming, losing themselves in the rhythm he controlled like a heartbeat. But something had changed, because behind the performance, behind the confidence, behind the smile, those words were still there. I see you. They echoed with every beat, not as pressure, but as fuel. Minutes turned into something timeless. The set built, climbed, exploded into something unforgettable. And by the time Anderson stepped back from the console, breathing hard, sweat dripping, the crowd chanting his name, he knew, this wasn't just another show, this was a turning point. Backstage, the energy was chaos again. Crew members rushing, voices overlapping, everything moving at full speed as the transition to Bruno's set began. Anderson stepped off, heart still racing. Bruno was already there, waiting. Yeah. Bruno shouted, pulling him into a quick hug. That's what I'm talking about. Anderson laughed, shaking his head. You got me messed up, man, he said. Bruno pulled back, raising an eyebrow. What? You know what you did, Anderson replied, half smiling. Almost had me out there emotional in front of 50,000 people. Bruno shrugged casually. Hey, real recognizes real. Another pause, but this time, it was lighter, because something had shifted between them, not dramatically. Not visibly to the outside world, but internally, deeply. Appreciate you, Anderson said finally. Bruno nodded once. Always. And just like that, the moment passed. Or at least, that's how it looked, because out on that stage, minutes later, as Bruno Mars stepped into the spotlight and the crowd erupted all over again, something subtle lingered in the air. A connection. A story. A truth that the audience would never fully hear, but somehow feel. And somewhere in the middle of the performance, between the lights, the music, the perfection, Bruno glanced toward the side of the stage. Just for a second Anderson stood there. Watching, not as a DJ, not as an opener, but as someone who had just been reminded, exactly who he was. And in that silent exchange, no words. No spotlight. No audience awareness, something changed. Not everything, but enough to carry forward, enough to matter, enough to turn one night into something neither of them would ever forget, because sometimes, the moments that change everything aren't the loud ones. They're the quiet ones, the ones that happen just before the world is watching, the ones where someone finally says the thing you didn't know you needed to hear. And for Anderson. Paak, that moment didn't happen under the lights. It happened in the shadows, right before he stepped into them. And that's why, long after the final note faded, long after the crowd went home, long after the headlines tried to tell their own version of the story, there was only one truth that really mattered, not the rumors, not the exaggerations, not the viral clips, just a simple moment between two artists, where one looked at the other and said, I see you. And meant it.